Everybody. I know this is kind of a strange thing to see on my screen, but I promise I'm going to explain exactly what it's for. But first and foremost, we need to start with a prayer. Would somebody be willing to give us a prayer today? Just one second, I got another panel here. Would be willing to give us a prayer today? No? Okay, if you want to be a panelist, just raise your hand and I'll get you switched over. And like I said, we're still waiting for somebody who's willing to give us a prayer today. All right, a lot of people want to be panelists. That'll be great. So I expect that we're going to get some really good discussion going today then, right? Okay, so that'd be wonderful, Anna, if you could say the prayer. I'd appreciate that. Go right ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, Anna.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to art class this afternoon. Thank you for your help us learn and to be and receive these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Anna. Okay, so I've been thinking a lot today about families, right? And I promise this is all going to tie in together with our lesson. And part of it is because, let me close this here and I want you to see this. This is my sweetheart. This is my daughter who just got married, right? Just 2 weeks ago. And her pictures have come in, and this is the wonderful woman who did her pictures and made my little girl look like a fairy princess, doesn't she? And I just love these pictures. I just think that they're absolutely gorgeous. And of course, she is married, this wonderful young man, and his name's Jared, and there he is, and we adore Jared. He is a lot of fun, and he makes us laugh, and he makes us smile, and we tease and we laugh a lot, and it is so fun to be with them. So that's Jared, and this little girl there is Rain. And I'll see if I can find a picture of the two of them together for you, but so that's my beautiful baby, and there you go. And somebody was walking up the dry riverbed with their donkey, and the donkey's name is David the donkey, and we laughed because Rain's brother's name is David, who's on a mission and couldn't be there, so we kept joking that she got to have her picture with David anyways. But there it is, and how beautiful this day turned out to be. And as I was thinking about this, I couldn't help but recall that the whole reason that this happened and this beautiful day happened sitting at this altar with my sweetheart and her sweet new husband, and that we laughed and we joked around and we had the best day ever. And it was all because of one thing. And I'm going to show you right here. This is my daddy. And that's my daddy with my baby who's now 13. And this particular day, he was trying to convince Catherine to take a nap, and he laid down beside her to take a nap. And this is what family's all about, right? Is those minutes together, and it's about what we are, what we teach each other. And my dad has made it to every baptism and every baby blessing, and he has 29 grandchildren, and he never misses any of them. And you know why he never misses anyone? Because the gospel is that important to him. There's nothing more important to him than the gospel. And he's taught us that. And so I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to show you this. And so when we look and we have days like this one, this was last night. This was just last night. It was my husband's birthday. It was last night. And we had a great time. And we laughed. And we went to my brother's house. In fact, that's my husband's little Prius sitting out there. And you can see my brother lives in the country a little bit, just a mile and a half from us. But he's already sitting in the country. And he's across from a cornfield. And we love it. And we love it because it's so much fun. And this is all about family. And this is my nephew. This is Hunter Man. I love Hunter Man. Hunter's 11. And we couldn't find matches to light the candle for the birthday cupcake. And guess what? He ran out to the garage and got a blowtorch. So yes, he's lighting birthday candles with a blowtorch. What do all these fun family stories have in common? What they have in common is one thing, plain and simply, that we've been taught the same principles. And we're together because we're taught the same principles. So last night I shared this picture with my sister-in-law, Charlotte, and she quickly sent one back to me, and I didn't get it up here in time for you, but it's a picture of my brother, and not this one, not the father of this one, but a different one. And he was lighting his daughter's birthday cake with a blowtorch because he couldn't find a match. Isn't that funny? And she called it the Harrington thing. So there we go. We are all about family. Isn't family wonderful? So as we're looking in here, and I'm going to show you a couple of other, I don't think I have any other pictures actually, because you don't really want to see a ton of pictures, right? There you go. There's a sister and here's one of my sisters with her new baby. That's Ezra, and the picture here of her family was all taken at that temple that day with her 6 children. Isn't this fun? Isn't family fun? I love family. And one of the things I love so much about family is that we have a story, right? Do we have a story? And you sit down and you go to talk about your story or share the story, and there aren't very many people who know the story, right? But now you've got it. So for the rest of our lives, we're going to remember about David the donkey, right? And we're going to laugh and we're going to joke about it. But who else knows about David the donkey? Not very many people, do they? And so we have this combined shared story. We have a shared history. We have shared traditions. The traditions are that the temple is special and that it's the foundation of our family and nothing else matters. It's just about the temple. So that's what I love the most. And as I scroll through these pictures and I look at my sweet son-in-law, and I just love him to pieces. He is such a good man, and he's a return missionary. So why did my little girl, who's a return missionary, marry a return missionary? Because she has this wonderful man on this side. This picture now I've gotten rid of, right? But she has this wonderful grandfather who has taught her and loved her and taught her to love the gospel and to love the temple. Isn't that awesome? When we went to Phoenix, one of the very first things my kids said is that they wanted so desperately to go to the temple, and they each brought their temple recommends so they could go do baptisms for the dead, and their grandfather took them. And they were so excited. They came bounding out of that temple, very irreverently, I'm going to add, to say, "Mom, this was so awesome. I have now been to 4 different temples to do baptisms for the dead." Isn't that exciting to be 13 years old and be in 4 different temples? Well, maybe that's not very exciting if you live in Utah, but out here in the Midwest where it's pretty far to get to a temple, it's exciting. So today I want you to think about that and think about all the wonderful things that your family has taught you and who they are. And today we're going to study the Bellini family. Now I'm going to give you a picture here. This is the Bellini family. Now the Bellini family were great artists, and they were part of this Renaissance time. To understand why they're so pivotal, we really need to understand part of that Venetian art history, and we need to understand the status of the artists and the function of schools and the importance of family ties. And also, we also need to think a lot about geography and climate. Now, I want you to think about today as we're moving forward is all the wonderful things that you have been taught from your family and how important they are. Okay? Now, a lot of our stuff today comes from Wikipedia, and there's some great information in here. You're going to see that here's Nicoletti. And so Nicoletto, sorry. I'm used to a Nicoletti because I have a friend named Nicoletti. But here's Nicoletto Bellini. And you can see that here he is from Venice. So we want to think there are their roots, these wonderful roots. And we go down the line, and we end up with all these wonderful Bellini families. Here's Johannes, and you have Giovanni, and all of them have been taught beautiful skills. So I'm going to read to you a section from an art historian. He says, "Today's art is a manifestation of the artist's creative spirit. Certainly the sale of art is an important element, but thousands of artists who have little hope of ever selling their work still continue to paint and carve with great energy. Art is their calling and their catharsis." Got a frog in my throat. "Financial rewards, most of them believe are important, but considerations of very low order. One debases art by talking about how much it costs. This attitude was foreign to the Renaissance when art was made on demand for commissions. The idea that a work was simply a personal expression of the artist would have been alien to the mentality of artists and their public alike. From Mozart, the supreme works were made with their commercial value very much in mind. Do you understand? Are you getting that? Isn't that exciting to think about it? That art was like I got a great analogy for you. Art was kind of like technology of the day, right? Everybody wanted to have some. It showed their wealth. So today when we walk around and we are like, oh, well, do you have a smartphone? Right? Most people have one. But if someone doesn't have a smartphone, what do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. You almost feel sorry for them, don't you? Oh, that's too bad. And that's the way art was during the Renaissance era. Oh, I'm so sorry you can't afford that. So one has to think about the Renaissance art as an industry, just like technology is for us today. Except it was, of course, a very primitive industry, and it was a collective economic enterprise. Artists geared themselves to the manufacture and sell and profit of utilitarian and beautiful objects. These artists and their wives came generally but from what might now be termed the craftsman and small tradesman class. They did not move in the elite, powerful circles of society. Did you know that? They were very, very poor. They weren't very wealthy, powerful people. Surviving records from this time suggest that artists had about the same rank in society as goldsmiths, shoemakers, and tailors. They were below the powerful, wealthy bankers and traders, and they were many steps above the poverty-stricken manual laborers and wool workers. The artists engaged in money-making ventures outside their shops, and some even invested funds in interest-bearing bonds. So here's the cool part. Do you know how an apprentice like Giovanni, how do they learn about artistry? How do you think that art was passed down, the techniques of creating art? How are they passed down from one generation to another? Do you know? How were they passed down? Nobody wants to take a gander? Take a guess. How do you think? How do you think art was passed down from one generation to another? I'll tell you what, I'll give you a hint. Exactly the same way that my little girl has a great love for the temple. Let me scroll down here so you can see the temple pictures. Gilbert Temple. So here's my baby and her sweetheart in front of the Gilbert Temple. Isn't that gorgeous? Why is it that the temple was so important to her? Because it was passed down from her grandfather. Her grandfather, my father, is a convert to the church. I'm a convert to the church. And the temple became a pivotal point. And do you know that when I talk to him, do you know what one of the very first things he asks every time we talk to him is, when was the last time you were to the temple, sweetheart? What is your goal for temple attendance this year? That's what he asks. Isn't that an interesting thing? It's not, oh, how are you doing? Yeah, did you get the kitchen wall painted yet? How's that remodeling going there, honey? Right? No. How's the temple doing? That's his question. For birthday this year, we have a wonderful book, and it's called Come and See, and it's the history of the temple, the Indianapolis temple, and that's what he wanted for his birthday. And my sister-in-law and brother, that's what they bought for him. And only because they got it first, that's why. But Giovanni got this same kind of history and this same art and this same desire, and he learned through generations. It was passed down from one person to another. And we can see that the art really was their family business and was a very profitable one. Okay? And we can see here how profitable it was. Look at the background here. I want you to see, how were these people living? Upholstered furniture, right? Look at this. Father is well dressed, the pinafores on the young ladies. Can you see here? Somebody tell me, do you see the wealth in this picture? Yes? Good. I want you to see the wealth. Whoops. I want you to see the wealth in this picture because it shows what they accomplished by being artists, right? Okay. So, there was a man by the name of Montiana who married into the Bellini family, and he was actually the son of a carpenter. And his marriage to Nicolese Bellini was very advantageous to him. It was socially advantageous to him, right? But also artistically advantageous. Jacobi Bellini didn't regret his choice to consent to the marriage. That was the father, because Vasari recounts that Monteano was born of the most humble stock, and although he was used as a shepherd, his skill and his ability to paint and his talent for the arts raised him to the rank of a noble knight. Can you imagine? Okay, so during this time, during this Renaissance time, we had great schools and guilds and places such as that would teach and would help. So what was the role of the school during this era? Anybody know? What was the role of the school during the Renaissance? What was the role of the school during the Renaissance era? What was the role of the school during the Renaissance? Does anybody know? What did schools do? Remember we talked about Michelangelo? He went to school, didn't he? They taught the arts, yeah? And they did a lot of teaching. We talked about this. They taught, yeah. But remember last week we talked a lot about the 4 areas of knowledge, right? The 4 areas of knowledge. And it was philosophy, religion was in there, the arts were in there. See what was so important to them? What was important to them was wisdom and philosophy and arts. Okay, so this was the expectation for artists of the day. You ready? Okay, so the acquisition of style was by imitation. Almost all the artists learned their skills by imitation, and they worked from life. They took inspiration from wherever they found it. But the fundamental techniques of design, drawing, and modeling came from other art. They studied the plaster casts. They would visit church, or later centuries, they went to the museum to copy the works of others. They examined or illustrated books. This was part of the experience for every artist, and copying was the right and logical thing to do. Do we do that today, copying? No? What do we call it if you copy? Especially in your essays or school, right? There's a horrible word we use all the time. Plagiarism. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, hello. And I'll say it periodically. Hello, plagiarism, right? We have to cite our sources. So copying is no longer what? Approved of, is it? Not just approved of, but it's not really a logical thing to do. It's not the right way to do things. We want people to think on their own. So now, when we think about this Renaissance era, people learned through copying. So when we look at these wonderful men like Giovanni, how does he learn? That's right, he learns from others, right? Isn't that exciting that he learned from others? He learned from those that came before. He learned from the society that was around him. He learned from workshops. He learned from apprenticeships. He learned to imitate openly. And so did all of his family, right? Okay. So the Bellini family ran a school, an art school in Venice. Did you know that? Anybody knew that? No? Okay. Wonderful. So Sydney says, I don't know if it's just me, but it looks like in that picture of the family that the little girl is standing by her mother. It looks like the artist tried to do contrasting and light on her face. Let's look at that. Oh, great. That is. I love that. That's a great observation. Thank you so much, Sydney. I appreciate that. That's a great observation. I hadn't noticed that. A little bit contrasting light there. Good job. And they use quite a bit of, you can see the shadowing here along the edge of the fireplace. Great job. Thank you for that wonderful observation. So they're the ones that really ran a school in Venice, and it was for the artists. And it was the Vivarini family school. And it was their rival. And they really, really tried to emphasize new developments, and they built a legacy that rivaled the greats such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and even surpassed it. Okay, are you ready? I'm going to read you something. And this is from a great art historian. He says, with great frequencies, artists came from artistic families. They passed things on, didn't they? So this vast network of artists' interrelation has not yet been charted, but we do know that a high percentage of artists were related, either by blood or marriage, to other artists. Now, I wanted to show you this because I found this up here. Can you see, here's the family tree. So you can see that this particular one has actually been traced out. I didn't copy that because obviously that one there is copyrighted. We're not going to make a picture of it, but you can see the little squares when they're talking about that. So the extended family was the foundation of the Renaissance society, and its role in the arts was crucial. They have no records that prove it, but workshops and much of the equipment in them were passed down from one relative to the other. One case, that of the Sienese artist of the 14th century, Ducci, illustrates some of the family relationships between the artists. And this man lived in 1319, and he had a brother named Bonaventura, which means the good adventure, believe it or not, or the good experience. He also seemed to have been a painter. And then there were three sons, Ambrogio, Galgano, Giorgio, and Giovanni was a possible fourth that were also painters. And then there were nephews that were painters. And so you can see how this family just went on and on. So we can see how common it was for a family to move on in the same field. All right. So I want you to look and think about what your parents do. What do your parents do for an occupation? What do your parents do for an occupation? Would you enjoy having their occupation? No. Manager of a rental store? No. So no. Sydney's like, no. That's what my kids say about their dad. My husband, Carrie, you know what he does? He is a process engineer, which means he takes all of the data from a business and figures out how to make a company more profitable. He looks at numbers all day, statistics, graphs, right? Yeah. My kids, no. Thank you. Not interested, right? They just don't want to do that. And there's nothing wrong. So Anna, she says her dad's a scientist, but you don't know if he'd enjoy that. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'd enjoy that as much as other things. Exactly. So we don't have to do what our parents did. But in this era, the era of the Bellinis, that's what they did. They passed it on from one place to another. Now also, the interesting thing is when we look at the map of this era, okay, we're going to scroll this up and see how much of it we can get in there. Oh, look, I can get almost all of it. Isn't that exciting? It just makes me smile. Okay, so here we go. So we think of this Italy really as one country, but during the Renaissance, all of these little countries were actually, or this country, not little countries, but this country was actually different provinces, which would be a great word, or like, how would we say them today? Kind of like counties or states, right? And they had their own separate operating governments. All right, I would love for you, for the opportunity to be able to walk through this. Wouldn't this be interesting to be able to see how it really worked this day? So here you go, though. But so you can see here's Florence, okay? And, many artists actually went to Rome, and you'll see that Rome is down here. Where else did we say they went? Venice. Yeah, Venice, right? So this is where Bellini's were from, the Venice. Okay, so many artists would travel all over the place. Now, here's the interesting thing. Where is Venice located? You see that star? Where's that city located? Where's the city located? I don't care about the name of it. I don't care about the name of the body of the water there, but yeah, Republic of Venice, yeah. And it's right on the water, right? So it was a port. What happened at this time when you had a port, right? You know what it was called? A hub. Think about that. Technologically, we have hubs in our homes, right? Routers. Merchants. Exactly, merchants. Thank you, Sydney. Merchants. So what else happens when you have a hub? So you have lots of merchants that come in. What else happens? If you have a lot of merchants, trading. Yeah, trading. Trading happens. That means a lot of knowledge comes in there, doesn't it? Right? Yeah, your stuff could be taken all around the world. It could. So there was a lot of information that would come in and out of this port all the time, wouldn't it? And that's what was happening for the Bellinis. They were set up in the perfect place. I mean, look how perfect that is right there. And they were right in the very center of being able to find, hear, grow, right? They learned all kinds of things because they were geographically in the right spot. Venice was the thriving city, a great economic city. Did you know it even survived the Black Death, the plague? Did anybody know that? Yeah. Okay, but look at this too. So, um, Florence was pretty landlocked, right? Not much trading there. Rome, kind of on the edge, but still pretty landlocked, isn't it? So when you look at Venice, you can see why it is that it became such a thriving metropolis of information. It was because it was very easy for people to get to in those days. Today, this wouldn't have been any kind of an issue for us, really, would it? But today, or then, in that day, it was, because look at how far you'd have to travel over land, a very slow method to get somewhere, versus being able to fly or sail right into a port. Okay, so Venice received travelers from all over the world. Not only that, this particular area had a great climate, so it allowed for a lot of very durable and moisture-resistant mediums. Okay, so things that would survive very well, such as this wonderful painting here called The Madonna with the Child. What do you think? Isn't that really pretty? What do you notice about that? Remember we talked about these almost like the halos around the head, those auras that they put in there, right? So this was done by Jacopo Bellini, and it was done in oils, okay? And it is one of the very first Venetian oil paintings. So Giovanni is actually, and this is the painter's son, was the one. Here's Giovanni. Remember we looked at him, okay? So Giovanni is the son, and he's the one who was noted for bringing in and introducing oil paintings first to the people of Venice. So the oil paintings that were done or that were used in this particular thing were actually introduced to the people by Giovanni. Whoops, did I lose Giovanni? Oh, he's way over here. Sorry, by Giovanni. Oh, that's Johannes. Sorry, I'll get it right. Just a second. That's Pedro. We'll figure it out. But you get the idea. Isn't this exciting, though, to learn and to know how these people were set up so that they could be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time? All right, I want to show you another picture. I really like some of these because you have these wonderful influences of the Bellini family. Okay, so this is a portrait. And the portrait is made by Giovanni. And I want you to look at the rich colors and the details that Giovanni used. Okay, this is an oil painting. Tell me what you think of that oil painting. What are your impressions? The details, yes. It looks lifelike, super real. It does, doesn't it? It really does. I love that part too. Thank you, Anna. I like the draping on there. And look at the details here in the cloth. Can you imagine being able to paint something so meticulously that you even get a little bit of reflection? I mean, look, you can see how some of this material here looks metallic, doesn't it? Isn't this incredible? Okay. So when we look at this, you can see all of these wonderful abilities that they have learned. So Giovanni, who does this, now look here, when? 1430 to 1516, okay? And he learns to paint. Oh, Jacob, you said exactly what I was going to say. He learns to paint as if it looks like a photo. And he says it even looks like a school photo background. And it does. This blue looks kind of like a school photo background. But he looks and he paints in a way that the man looks real, doesn't he? It looks as if a photograph has been taken of it. Okay, so here you go. Let's look at this one here. All right. This one here, the name of this is The Lamentation over the Dead Christ. Okay, so after 500 years, artists were studying to master all of these different techniques. But Mantegna, remember, he's the one that married into the Bellini family. He didn't follow all of these oil mediums and the trends and the historical things. Instead, he learned everything he could and tried something new. All right, so after 500 years, people are still studying this technique, trying to figure out how, and to not how, but to learn from his techniques. So what do you think? Do you have a preference between, whoops, we don't really want to see Jared and Ring. Actually, I don't mind looking at Jared and Ring, but where are we looking at? Madonna. Oh, actually, let's look here at Giovanni's. Okay, so here's Giovanni's. And let's pull him up. So, there we go. Okay. I'm just going to hold up partial of the thing here. Now compare. You've got the oil mediums over here that Giovanni used, and Mantegna over here on the other side used more of a tempera painting with softer colors. What do you tell? What kind of difference do you see? Which one looks more like a painting, which looks more like a photo? It does. Giovanni's really does look more like a photo. Um, I, for me, I love both of them. I love the wonderful, wonderful differences between each of these. Okay, so I'm going to just minimize this. And let's open this one up here. I want you to watch a video for a minute. And as you're watching this, I want you to think about what it means to pass down information and traditions and things from one generation to another. I want you to think also about how you can find ways to connect your family. What do you do to connect your family? And think about this. Is it something silly that comes up real easy? And I'm going to show you, like my little nephew here, right? That all of a sudden, what fun we had when we were sharing yesterday I took the picture and I sent it via text to all of my family. And pretty soon everybody is commenting, oh, look, there we are, Harringtons, can't keep them down. Oh, and then somebody else popped in. Oh, look, Kevin did this just 2 weeks ago. And our whole family, all the siblings, everybody. And I'm one of 6. And their spouses were all commenting and laughing. And we traded text messages all evenings. So we created, what? A connection over something new. Because we've passed something down from one generation to another. Was it intentional? Not at all. It wasn't intentional at all, but it was a lot of fun, and we remembered who we were. So as you are watching this video that I'm going to bring up right here, I'd like for you to think about this, okay? It's about 4 minutes long, but I want you to think about how it is that your family traditions change. What is it, just 1 second here, what is it that creates these traditions in your family? Okay, it's about 4 minutes long, and then we're going to come back together. Okay, quite a few people are done. I want you to think about what are some of the traditions in your family and what do you use them for, right? So we have traditions. I know we have quite a few. And I'm going to share with you my very favorite one. In my family, we're converts. And one of the hardest things for us to do was general conference, right? Oh, general conference can be so difficult sometimes, can't it? And because it's just so long. And when I was growing up, we had to go to the church building because we lived far away from a church building, and we lived in an area where we couldn't watch conference on TV. And so my mother every single time would try to get us all excited, and she planned a special conference games, and there were special conference foods that we only ate during conference time, and all these wonderful ideas, and we put them all together, and we would look forward to conference. And so we would all sit down and we'd get to play our conference bingo, and we got to have our conference rules. And guess what? If you ask my mom, even today, Mom, I am so hungry for conference rules. Can I have conference rules? She'll look at you and she'll say, is it conference? Just that plain. She doesn't care if we're grown. You can only eat conference rules on conference. But you know what? Those traditions are important. They're important to us because they've created a common base. And we know what's important, right? So I want you to think about your traditions and what they are. So some of our traditions is every child and grandchild gets to go to the races with my dad. Why? Because he used to be a race car driver. That's what he did before he became a member of the church. And he left that field because racing is a Sunday sport. And he knew that if he wanted to keep the Sabbath day holy, he would not be able to continue as a race car driver and be able to also be a member of the church. So he quickly left it. And you know what he became instead? A janitor. He left the church, or he left racing, and he left all of the wealth and the fame behind to be a janitor. Why? Because it was important for him to keep the Sabbath day holy. Traditions, right? So you know, when he takes my children and my little nephews and my nieces to the races, and he goes often, every Friday night there's a race by him, you know what he says? He tells them the story. He tells them the story of living the gospel and of being faithful to keeping the Sabbath day holy. A tradition, right? So all of these things, when we do them, they create traditions. Do you know another one we do? Every time my dad comes to visit, and he'll be here in just 2 weeks, we can't wait to see him. The other one that he does all the time that we laugh about is we play a silly game called Drop the Hinky. It's kind of like Duck, Duck, Goose. So you have these traditions for a very definite reason. It's to create a solid family. Okay, as we move forward, I want you to look into your, oops, I'm already here. I want you to look forward right here into your web page for the family school. We're on lesson number 15, and you're going to see that your assignment is right here. So be sure to get those done. Now, you will see that there is right here one that says an activity where you can draw or you can paint something, and I'd love to see your paintings. How fun would that be? So if you're going to do something like that, just take a picture of what you've done and send it in. I would love to see what you're up to. Other than that, I think we're done today. Does anybody have any questions about our lesson and the Bellini family? Okay. So we're going to end with a closing prayer, and then if anybody has a question afterwards, I'll stick around for a couple minutes and we can visit. Anybody willing to give us a closing prayer today? Sorry about that noise in the background. It is my life. It is spring break here. But anybody willing to give us a closing prayer today? Oh, Sydney, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Okay. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for today. We're grateful for our teacher and the effort that she puts forth into preparing these lessons and teaching them to us. Please help us that we'll be able to apply what we have learned today and apply it to the rest of our lives. And we are grateful for everything you've given us. We ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you very much, Sydney. Okay, does anybody have any questions, concerns, or worries today?